Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Unknown Podcast with your boys Honora and
Hedy.
what's happening?
By the way, this guy, I'm good, man. By the way, we need to figure out a name for our podcast.
I
Unknown.
like Unknown though. Unknown's kind of
Unknown is too vague.
it's too vague.
It's too like these guys haven't figured shit out.
Yeah,
Not that we have in
don't know
real
what
life
it
either.
is. They don't know what it is. In life in general, we haven't figured things out.
Yeah.
How's your week been? Actually, no, it's not been a week. We only spoke the other day. We did a podcast the other day. The feedback, by the way, was really good regarding I think the Wakanda Forever. Like it was it was really lively. I mean, we'll talk about this in a later episode, but I think it'll be interesting to see how things progress with the film, just in terms of reviews, box office over the next few weeks. Yeah. But that was fun. How you doing? How you gearing up for Ghana, the World Cup?
For the Ghana, World Cup. Listen. This is the one World Cup where obviously I support my motherland. But this is the one World Cup where I have absolutely no expectation. Well, I do have an expectation. I know we're going to get whooped. But in a way, it's kind of freeing because I have no high expectations. So anything we can't, if we lose all our games, I'm prepared for that. If we win one of them, I'm ecstatic. So I'm going to be good either way. I just want us to go and represent ourselves all right, man. And you know what? I like what I think would be good is I don't think there's any pressure on the Ghanaian players. So I hope that gives them a certain level of freedom to just be themselves and do their best. So yeah, I'm hopeful.
Especially since you took the wind out of the sails of the Nigerians to qualify, so nobody was really
that probably meant more to us than
that was the win. That was the World Cup win.
Exactly. As far as Ghanaians are concerned, we're done. They've done their job.
We won the World Cup. We don't need anything.
They've done their jobs, man. That's it. Beat Nigeria. Good.
But this World Cup is looking like it's going to be something phenomenal, man. And you and I have been talking about this thing for a little while, especially regarding the it being in Qatar. That's been the main thing. Obviously, since the last World Cup, we've had the fallout regarding the FIFA's downfall, really. Gianni Infantino stepped up over the last. Was it still Sepp Blatter that was president the last World Cup? It was, right?
Yeah.
So Gianni stepped in, and then we also have and then the first unprecedented World Cup that's taking place at Christmas time. In the Middle East, first time in that part of the world. I even think first time in Asia.
No. So
Korea,
South Korea,
Japan.
But definitely first one in Middle East.
But Middle East. So I think it's worth talking about, mainly because, and I think from my own point of view, the main issues that concern me is just how critical people are of this whole Qatar bought the World Cup. How can a country with 1.8 million people that's no bigger than a state in America be able to host the World Cup? And I think it's important to start it's important to start figuring out how other teams have done it in the past. And of course, because of that, we went to watch the film, or rather we saw the film, the Fall of FIFA, which is available on YouTube, by the way. I think it was made by a German company, I'm not sure. So, and really it just begins to talk about essentially how Qatar won the World Cup. So what are your thoughts just in general about the whole World Cup before we get started?
Well, I think the big clue is in the bloody name. It's called a World Cup.
My brother.
And I believe there's been 22 World Cups, right?
Mm-hmm.
And here's how the specs for where they've been hosted. So 11 out of that 22. Actually, when I say 22, that includes Qatar. So technically, if we exclude Qatar, that's 21. So 11 of that 22 or 21 was in Europe. 5 of those was in South America. 3 were in North America. And actually, one interesting fact is the 3 in North America, the first twice was Mexico and once was US. And Mexico both times happened before US, which I think is quite an impressive feat if you think about it. Yeah. But anyway, the point I was trying to make was...
I guess more of a footballing nation than...
Yeah, no, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And also, yeah, because automatically you think the US, because of the infrastructure,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
even though they're not they weren't a football nation, you think they'll have the infrastructure to host these things. But anyway, I'm glad that it kind of was Mexico first for some reason.
Yeah.
Um, but if you think about it in that context, 21 World Cups, 16 of those happen in either Europe or South America. That's roughly 88, 89%.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, that is not a World Cup. That is not a World Cup. So for me personally, I'm a very big proponent of, the competition going into different areas
Everywhere.
across
Yeah.
the globe.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there will be many. And what I find interesting is, some of the points, some of the criticism that is come across Qatar, not just Qatar, but like other, no, South Africa when they hosted it came
Mm-hmm.
across. It's all these issues about, Qatar, they don't have, it's a 1.8 million population, they don't have enough this and that. It's like every country will have different problems.
Yeah.
Just because
Yeah.
it's not the UK that has a fully fledged, stadiums in every county all the way up north, it doesn't matter. The whole
Mm-hmm.
point is this is a World Cup. It should be celebrated worldwide. And
Mm-hmm.
I think by doing so as well, it probably more importantly, it actually exposes the Western culture to other cultures as well. Because
Mm-hmm.
as much as we have had the pleasure of living in different continents, being friends with people from different parts of the world, so we
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
understand. And being a minority, we have to understand culture a lot more because
Absolutely.
we
Yeah.
always have to assimilate it to somebody else's culture. But I
Mm-hmm.
think for the most part, people in the West, not for the most part, but on the, actually, I guess for the most part, they're quite ignorant about other, cultures because again, their
Mm-hmm.
culture is the dominant one, and it's
Of
understandable.
course.
But I think by having this tournament in different locations around the globe, it allows for other people that enjoy football to have it in their area. It allows for those that have historically had it, in Europe and South America to be exposed to other regions. I mean, look at South Korea. South Korea's the World Cup was great. Yes, it
Mm.
does timing difference, but come on, it gave us it
Yeah. Yeah.
opened up South Korea to a world audience, and all those
Yeah.
things. Fair enough, they're not like hard tangible results, they're intangible sort of benefits, but they're also important. So anyway, I guess the point I'm trying to make is when it comes to World Cup, I'm a big proponent of it actually being a World Cup and therefore being
Mm-hmm.
hosted around the world.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll get into Qatar specifically because this was my mindset from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, as we've done a little bit of research, even from the light research that we've done with Qatar, I have a bit more of a balanced view, which again we'll get
Mm-hmm.
into.
And I think you see, but that's the thing. It's a World Cup, and Sepp Blatter, love him or hate him, and that regime of FIFA that existed for like 20 years, uh, their aim was to take it around the world. Because really, if you look at the things that have happened over the last 20 years, of those 22 World Cups, let's say, how many of those World Cups had African teams in them, for instance? You understand?
Yeah,
African teams only started
that's a
coming in the
good
late.
question.
They only started joining the World Cup in the late 70s or something like that, or early
Really?
70s. Yeah, I think
Okay,
Zaire was
I
the
didn't
first.
know.
I think Zaire was one of the first. It was called Zaire. That just goes to tell you how long ago that was.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it was
Okay,
Zaire.
that's interesting.
Is so you had World Cups that were going back. Obviously England wins in '66. I think there are only about 12 teams in the World Cup at that point. Most of them in Europe, most of them in South America.
It's funny how they call
And,
it
and
World
and
Cup at that
and they
stage,
call it
isn't
a
it?
World Cup. Even when you go to Italia '90, just before 1994, Italia '90, you had a handful. I think you had Cameroon, you had Egypt. Even in the Middle East, I think only United Arab Emirates was there. So it wasn't truly a World Cup. And then you go 4 years later, and then you finally start having, I think, 5 African countries. And for
Mm,
the last nearly 30 years, there are only 5 African countries. A continent of 54 countries, 53, 54 countries, and they only
mm,
allow five countries. So there's a lot of evolution that's happened over the last 20 years. So
okay.
with that regime of FIFA, I think we need to give them some props for making it more
Okay.
international. Even
Mm,
having the whole thing with the FIFA Executive Council where they pick people from different parts of the world to be part of it, which also is part of how they criticize this whole Qatar thing, right? But having that just makes it truly a global game. And as a result, look at how football is perceived. Probably the biggest the biggest people in the world, probably some of the most followed people in the world, are footballers. I think Cristiano Ronaldo is biggest on Instagram.
Yeah.
I think Neymar is not far off in terms of Mbappe's, those sorts of people. So they've really helped spread the game because of because of how international it is, and that's in a way why we still call it football, not soccer, because it's not soccer because America, as much as it likes to think that it dominates in its sport, it cannot dominate in football because it goes to different corners of the world that American sports simply don't.
Yeah.
So
and
there's
to the
that.
point, as to the earlier point, that's probably why Mexico even hosted the World Cup.
And that's probably why,
Yeah.
because they have it. And also, if you look, Mexico also has a legacy in football in the sense that how far they go. Like you think of Mexico, they're like Real Madrid winning the Champions League. They shouldn't, but they will, because they just have that in their DNA. It's like Mexico at the World Cup. And we'll get to the groups later also. So we'll talk
and
about
actually, by the by, apparently the Mexico Azteca Stadium is sick. Like it's one of those ridiculous, like 90K.
Looks like a Coliseum or something like that. Yeah,
that shuld be an imposing place to play, man.
But that's because these are poverty-stricken, for lack of a better word, third world countries. So these are places where football is perceived differently.
Yeah.
What I wanted to do, Kay, is just go through a couple of different points that will come up before we delve into the actual topic. Number one, Qatar being a nation, how excited do you think the British people, I know we've heard a lot in the press, but how excited do you think British people are about going to Qatar vis-a-vis the policies and the way, the Islamic culture and how it perceives Western culture, etc.? So
I don't think they're that excited. No, I don't think they're that. I mean, again, and I've tried to really stay away from it because I think in recent times you kind of fully understand the nature of, I guess, propaganda, for lack of a better word. So I've tried to stay away from the criticism a little bit. But I mean, the message seems to be, it's as you said, there's a lot of criticism of Qatar itself. Obviously, there are certain things that deserve the criticism, but like in terms of the one thing that annoyed me was the whole alcohol thing.
Yeah,
that they've banned alcohol and everything, and it's like when you really think about it, it's like, hold on. So you're trying to tell me that first of all, it's not saying you can still get alcohol. Let's just make that right. You can still get alcohol. There are places near the stadium. Bear in mind, the whole city where the stadiums are, I think the furthest two stadiums are 40 miles apart. And apparently they have like fan areas where people can go and chill, watch games, biscuit, all of those things.
Yeah, there's zones where you can drink alcohol.
Yeah.
But sorry. So let me.
No.
Right, we've not even started.
So it's almost like, people want to be able to do exactly what they've done, what they're able to do in their country. And, I understand that. But to the point where you are completely ignoring somebody else's culture, just
you have to respect people's culture.
Yeah, you have to respect.
You have to respect people's culture.
I think that's the bit that,
and I think that's what frustrates them. And keep in mind, right? If you go back 32 years, the Italian 90, and there's been so many documentaries made on the Italian 90. Just keep in mind, England was banned from football in Europe for 5 years before that Italian 90. So they weren't even allowed to play football in Europe because of their hooliganism. So these are people who have already been proven to be unruly when they go abroad anyway. But they have the audacity, and this is where the superiority complex comes in. They have the audacity to say, oh, but these people, how are they going to, where are we going to drink? Do you have enough hotels for us? Gary Neville, people like that going and doing documentaries where they're criticizing the people for how they pay the staff and how they look after the staff. But at the end of the day, you get paid by them to go on and do punditry. So there's a lot of hypocrisy. They criticize, the leagues are having to stop midway through the season. When people know that the soccer leagues in Africa and in the Middle East pretty much go from the start of the year to the end of the year, all these World Cups, they've had to stop in the middle of their leagues to go and participate because it was fitting the European calendar. So as football is actually becoming more international, the stakeholders, if you will, the people that own it, that say it is home here, the stakeholders want to say that, they're finding it uncomfortable to let go, but they have no choice. Qatar is a world power. The Middle Eastern nations are a world power. And Qatar getting the World Cup pissed off the UAE. So they're prepping. They're prepping for something. Saudi is prepping for something. They are all prepping for without question. Maybe not, probably not for the next 10 years.
But Saudi
they're all thinking,
because Saudi are sort of focusing on the golf, aren't they? Because they've started their own sponsored golf tournament, which is
not just that, they do a lot of WWE, boxing.
Oh, even the boxing,
WWE, Bellator, MMA. Like, they are investing heavily in sports, bringing sports over. Anthony Joshua fought twice in Saudi Arabia. That's the biggest heavyweight fighter of the last 20 years. So they're investing in sports, and UAE is doing the same thing. I think they've been Floyd Mayweather fought in Abu Dhabi just on the weekend. They're really investing in sports. So that region, with the oil wealth, with the community they have, even though they beef each other, they still have a community in the sense that we have a shared view. We're all Islamic. We all dress the same, pretty much. We all act the same. We all think the same. And we all know that these people want to spoil our culture. So they're all united in that sense. So and the fact that they all have this wealth means that going forward, we can look forward to more and more high-profile events, sports, entertainment going on in that part of the world. And also keep in mind that I think the busiest flight route in the world at the moment is London-Dubai. So it also tells you that people here are also realize it, and they might criticize it, but they know that they benefit from it. And once power starts to shift to a different region of the world, which is basically what's happening, power is shifting from Europe to that part of the world, to Asia, the Middle East. I think as power shifts, people start to feel uncomfortable, and so they criticize these things. And now we'll get into the actual World Cup bit.
Do you know? Sorry, just before we get into that, this is the one thing. Everything you said was on point. I think it emphasized how this world is run by money, man. My guy, money runs rules as well. It's as simple as that.
Money trumps race.
30 years ago, people weren't paying the Middle East no mind.
Nah.
But now, look at even talking about just football. Look at what the Qataris have done with PSG. Look at the influence. What's the guy's name?
Whatever his name is.
Yeah, the guy that owns PSG. Like, he's also the
Al Mansuri.
Is that
thing? No, Al Mansuri is City.
Man City. I forget his name now. But think about it. He is now the head of the European Clubs Association.
Incredible.
Like how? If you really think about how. Because
again, it shows how uncomfortable people are, right? Because again, and I've talked about this in other things that I've done regarding, I did a video about how Islam came to Africa from the Middle East, right? And even just trying to understand how diverse this part of the world is, right? Like, on the surface, they're Arabs, but in reality, a lot of them have mixture with Black people and so on. There's a lot of mixture, right? Okay. So when, for instance, you look at the guy and especially when you watch this documentary, The Fall of FIFA, the person who's in charge essentially of the bid for Qatar is a Black guy. He's not an obvious Black guy, but he's a Black guy, right? So all these things also play into the minds of the people. I never forget watching Al Mansuri's first few interactions with the Man City fans when they bought Man City. And he's trying to reassure them about things. And they can't get over that he's not white, obviously, and he's not Black, but this brown man is so articulate. But also, there's nothing we can do to get rid of him because he's bought this team. And you can see how uncomfortable the head of the fan club is. He's just like, yeah, and there's always an answer. So it's this overwhelming fear of okay, our dominance is going. And you will see it in this World Cup. And we'll get to the predictions because there's some things I think are going to happen that will shock the world. Anyway,
okay. But to your point about the fear about the dominance being over, do you think people even realize it? I almost think that people are...
Maybe not the masses. Maybe not the masses. Not the masses. Not the masses. No, the masses don't. No, the masses don't. But I think because you take the Premier League, right? Premier League now is what 75% foreign owned, in the sense that the companies that own them are registered outside. Some of them are registered here, but they're owned by somebody outside. But let's say 75%. Now that 75% is American, it's this and that. So to an extent, it doesn't feel too different. But the ones that are really like owned by nations whose, for lack of a better word, policies or ways of life people disagree with, are the ones that are at the top, or at least were. Chelsea under Abramovich, City. If you look even in Europe, mainland Europe, like PSG, Juve. Who owns Juve at the moment?
No, Juve is
not Juve.
Italians.
What am I thinking
Roma
about?
is owned by Americans. Who else?
Who else? I'm thinking of somebody in. It'll come back to me in a second. But anyway, the teams that are at the top, you look at Champions League winners. I think even Real Madrid has I think there's a certain stake that they have in the Middle East as well. I think they have the Emirates Airline sponsors them. So there's influence, even if it's not a direct like we own you. There's influence in the Middle East. You even look in Africa, like you see a visit Rwanda on PSG and on Arsenal. And people are just like, what is going on in the world where all these teams that seem to be successful are starting to be you could almost connect their success to countries which were considered third world. That is uncomfortable for people, especially the people in the money state, right? And I think even the everyday fans, when they're seeing this, ultimately what they want is success. Ultimately what they want is success. The fans and the everyday people, they don't really see past their own eyesight, right? Their own, like, they don't really see past that. But I think the people in power positions find this uncomfortable. I was listening on Talk Sport, and they were like, "Oh, how can they be doing this? This is just pure corruption. This is just pure corruption." Again, that Fall of FIFA documentary, it ends just by with people saying that the way the Qataris bought the World Cup, as you put it, is exactly how everybody did it, right? This documentary, which is basically about, it follows this guy, Chuck Blazer, who was he's a soccer administrator in the USA, football administrator, and he was general secretary of CONCACAF, which is the Federation for North America.
This guy is a healthy guy, if you know what I mean.
He was the fittest man in the world, the fittest, so fit, right? And essentially, he's the person that brought down those leaders of FIFA. But this documentary really talks about him and how it's really a personal thing about him and how he went about like trying to how the corruption was there and so on. But really what it concludes by saying is that even the Germans, excuse me, they did the exact same thing in order to win their bid. So the question is it that the Qataris are more
by the exact same thing, or what do you mean by that?
They did the same thing. Everybody put money under the table to win the bids. You have to bribe those FIFA executives in order to get them to give you a bid. It's politics. It's lobbying. That's what politicians do. That's what lobbying is. Yeah. That's what lobbying is. You go, you talk, you schmooze. I'll give you these votes. I'll give you those votes. You give me these votes. I'll give you this when I come to power. I'll give you whatever you need for your whatever fund you want to do. Whatever. That's basically how it works. It's no different. And if it's an unregulated industry, you can't really criticize them, right? And I'm not saying it's right. I'm just simply saying that they will attack the Qataris because they're these people who are seen as outsiders, for lack of a better word. They're outsiders. They dress different. They look different. They believe in different things. These people are uncomfortable. They're uncomfortable. And it would be no different to if a bunch of African teams or countries got their act together and then started dominating. It would be the same thing. It'll be the same feeling. It's just those other people. We're used to just Europe and North America. And so when they go and start criticizing the Qataris, they didn't do anything different to what everybody else was doing. You understand? And so I think before the criticism is labeled at this World Cup, people saying I won't watch this World Cup because these people about they don't believe in gay rights, they don't believe in this, they don't believe in that. If you won't watch football, which you love, because of people, a country doesn't have what your perceived your perceived idea of a country is that they don't have the shared values that you do, then why would you still watch football when you see the racism that goes on? Till today we're still talking about racism in football, but you'll still watch it then.
Yeah.
But you will boycott watching the World Cup, and they're lying. They'll watch.
Do you know what? Of course, and do you know what?
They're just uncomfortable with it.
The statement you just made, makes a very good point in the sense that it's almost as if that people expected Qatar to just change within the 12 years from when they won the bid to host in the World Cup. Like all of a sudden, boom, they're all, and not to say that, there are people there that are not LGBT friendly or whatever the case might be, but people want.
I'm even saying, irrespective of them being LGBT friendly, because people have a right to believe whatever they want to. Nobody has to. Of course. Nobody has to do what the West thinks that everybody can just do what they want. Anyway,
but the point I was trying to make was, which is to echo your point, is in the same way that there are racist issues happening in arguably the most established league in the in the world, Premier League, and yet we still watch it.
Yeah.
How more so a country that have their own values and just because you disagree with them, you expect them to just convert and be completely on your side, even when your own country doesn't even do the same thing to other minorities. It's a bit of it's quite hypocritical,
and it's also exactly is the hypocrisy of it is because they're not comfortable with a country who, I think it's not so much even that the people in Qatar are LGBT friendly or whatever, right? It's more to do with the fact that they are dogged in their beliefs. They don't shake. They're like, yeah, this is what we believe. And people in the West are used to being fake, used to acting like they're discussing things. There's a saying I always use, which is every major policy that is supposed to make the world move forward, in the West, they are the first to renege on it. They're the first people to go against it. Oh, we want green this. They're the first people to go and bring the big jeeps. We want no racism, but they are the ones that own the green thing. There's so much that happens in the West that they are just constantly, but because they're the ones that control the narrative all the time, they are the ones that are able to shape. These things are nuanced. They're not easy to do. Blah blah blah. But other people in the world, most places in the world, even in Africa, people tend to believe a certain thing, and that's it. You keep telling me to change, but that's what I believe. So it's a question of, are you going to have a world where there is Europe and then there's everybody else? Europe, which is effectively a minority in terms of population and size, because Europe really isn't even a continent. It's Eurasian. It's Eurasia. Europe is not a continent. It's just a part of it. It's a part of Asia, if you want to call it that. So, are you going to believe that the values you hold are the most important simply because you hold the power in the world? Or are you going to wake up and smell the coffee and realize that the rest of the world is catching up to you? Look at the infrastructure in Doha. And this could be, you don't get this in Miami, which is seen as, I suppose, luxury in America, one of the most luxurious places. You don't get this. But this place in Qatar, this is Doha, the capital. This is a man-made island. We have another one that they have in Dubai, right? There's Oman around the corner from Dubai, just the country next to it. There's Kuwait. All these countries look very similar because they have that oil money and they're putting it to good use. And keep in mind, remember the movie Lawrence of Arabia? The movie Lawrence of Arabia took place 100 years ago. The story took place 100 years ago, 110 years ago. 110 years ago, all these people, Ali Mansouri and all these people's grandparents, were in the desert in a tent. And effectively, because they helped the British, where's Kofi gone? Kofi, you there?
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah,
he just popped out. But 100 years ago, they were in the desert, and because they helped the British, they eventually created a nation. Now, it took them 100 years, but 100 years later, quite naturally, they are taking a superior place in history, and also in terms of economics. So the tide is shifting. And don't be surprised if another bid comes in, maybe not for the World Cup, but it might be for the Olympics. It might be for something. We had the World Athletics Championships a few years ago that was in Doha. Don't be surprised if an Olympic bid comes in for somewhere in the Middle East again. Don't be surprised, So yeah, Kobe, do you have anything else you want to add before we move on to the actual? I can hear you. Yeah, can you hear me? Hello. Technical difficulties. Kobe, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay. So yeah, anyway, I was just saying, let's. Do you have anything else you want to add before we actually move on to the World Cup and all the talking points?
Yeah, no, let's definitely get into it because let's get into that.
Okay. All right. So World Cup opening ceremony will kick off tomorrow. I'm very excited, by the way. I'm hearing Dua Lipa. I'm not sure. Is that her name?
Oh, I thought she wasn't performing. I thought she said she's not going to perform.
Okay, so she's not going to perform.
That's what I heard.
She boycotted it. Mm. You see hypocrisy. It's unreal. But believe me, she goes to get bags in that part of the world.
Oh, for sure.
The hypocrisy is so unreal. And these people, after a while, will realize, you know what, I was stupid. So fine. And I'm sure these people don't give a damn. I think, did you hear the World Cup theme song, by the way? It came out like 6 months ago. Davido and a couple people.
Oh, no, I haven't heard it. Who else?
I can't remember now. The artists, I don't remember their names, but I know Davido. Okay. But also, did you hear of, is Shakira still performing? Or did she boycott too?
I have no idea. Okay. I honestly don't know.
Well, we'll find out tomorrow anyway. But the World Cup opening ceremony for me, man. What was your first World Cup memory? Like, what was the earliest one you remember?
I think the earliest one will have to be USA '94, actually, because that's the the one with Baggio missing the penalty in the final. That really stuck in my head. I think that really stuck in my head. That was probably the first one, and then after that, '98, obviously, that was when we were young teens, so we're all involved in that. That's probably my favorite.
But I think that's the best. That's probably the best World Cup in terms of football. In terms of that's the first one I kept, like the stickers, like the first one.
I think that's the first one where I actually started watching from group stage. '94 was more like when it got to the latter stages. But also another one that was obviously important to me, being Ghanaian, was 2006, because that's when we had our dream team.
The Blasters,
and that fucking Luis Suarez stopped us from getting
10. That's 2010. That's 2010. You're thinking about that. 06, it wasn't the Suarez one.
Are you sure?
2010, the South Africa, the Uruguay quarterfinals. Yeah, that was South Africa. So you were
Germany. No, Germany's
Germany's 06,
wasn't it?
Yeah, Brazil kicked you out. Yeah. You guys got to second round. Yeah, second round. Yeah. But for me, also it's '94. That's the first one. I remember that one. I never forget, because Nigeria made it for the first time, right? And we had our golden generation: Sunday Olise, Amunike, Rashidi Akini, JJ Okocha, Daniel Amokachi. Like we had people that went to play in Barcelona, Juve. We had like serious players, Inter Milan and so on, right? And I never forget, I watched the opening ceremony with my mom. I can't remember who performed now, actually, can't think of it. And I remember seeing Germany versus, I remember that was the first time I realized there was a difference between Bolivia and Bulgaria. Because I was like, why are they two countries? Anyway, and then obviously the Nigeria moments, that Maradona moments where Nigeria played Argentina. We lost, even though we topped our group, we lost that game, but they cheated. And then it turned out that Maradona, after that game, tested positive for drugs, if you remember. So I never forget. And it's ironic because Sunday Olise got yellow carded. And I've been talking to Sunday Olise about doing a documentary on his life. So we're trying to put it together anyway. We'll see. So it's so ironic, like how these early football memories and now years later, they're talking to the guy. But then another game that really hit me was Cameroon-Russia. Was it Russia? Yeah, the 6-1.
Cameroon.
I never cried at a football game in my life. I never forget it.
Cameroon and Russia beat them 6-1.
Listen. It was 6-0 Russia. And Roger Miller at 42. Well, on his passport said 42. I don't know how old he was.
Listen, if an African has 42 on their passport, you best believe they're
at 42 years of age, Roger Miller scored a goal. It was 6-1, but it felt like every black child in the world was dancing. Every African child around the world, around Africa, was dancing. Because you remember Roger Miller for what he did at Italian 90.
Yeah, of course.
That memory was amazing. And then 98. with phenomenal Ronaldo, the real one. You know,
The
the real
original.
one, the original, the OG before the IG. You understand? Ronaldo.
That's a good saying.
Yeah, then that
OG
French
before
team.
the IG.
I never forget, because that's another thing, right? That's another thing with football. I think the inclusion of migration has helped the game become more international. You look at the French team, Dutch teams, Brazilian teams, and so on. Migration is a big deal. You look at that 98. I never forget, because I kept all the stickers. I looked at the Dutch team. Like, why are there so many black guys? Because you, in your head, you're not computing. You look at the French team. I remember Jamaica was even in that World Cup. You look at the French team. Half of them, you're like, your names don't even sound French, right? You look at the English team. You look at all the various teams around Europe. You're just starting to question yourself. Then you look at Brazil, and you're like, really? Football is a very black sport. When you really think about it, go to the top teams in South America: Brazil, Colombia, Argentina.
No, not Argentina. Argentina is probably the only one where it was.
No, I'm just naming them. But with the exception of Argentina, which doesn't has a policy of not having any black players, it seems like, right? With the exception of them, those dominant teams, you think about the greatest footballers in the world. Whenever they talk about the greatest footballers in the world, it's either Pele or Maradona, right? You think about even subsequent players, Ronaldo, Ronaldinho. These are players of African origin. Then when you even go to European players, when you talk about great players from England, right? John Barnes, right? Because in the 80s, he was almost like a Ronaldo in England. You look at Ian Wright, even though he wasn't great, but he was, pretty good. You look at in France, Thierry Henry. When you talk about the Premier League GOATs, Thierry Henry. You look at now even. So migration has helped the game become even more international. So I never forget that particular World Cup, seeing Kluivert and all those other guys, right? I don't think Rijkaard played. Just so many of those players, Clarence Seedorf,
Edgar Davids. Yeah.
You just start really understanding that there's a
and
reason.
Even at the back, Reisiger.
Come on.
Who was the other one? There's another guy.
Come on. Reisiger. The De Boer brothers were not black, but they were at the back. Who else was the other guy? Who else was there? Who else?
No, I think it's Overmars also on the left. But no. Those are definitely goats of our time.
So anyway, the point I'm making is into the like globalization of the sport and migration in general has helped the sport. You look at now, bro.
But
to Mbappe, what these people bring to the game, Neymar, Pogba, what the influence they have on the game is overwhelming. So that's a positive. And I think in terms of World Cup moments, man, 98 for me was the perfect World Cup. I think it was only not perfect because Brazil didn't win and we all expected them to.
Yeah.
And Ronaldo.
But to be honest,
but Zidane winning, I say Zidane, France winning was just equally. But
that was the thing. I think back then I was actually rooting for France as well, because Brazil at that point, they just, to me, they'd won it so many times. You almost wanted a change, and France were on the come up that year.
Yeah,
not that year, but that generation. So,
and I remember 2002. I think the final happened once we just finished school completely. 2002.
Yeah.
So I remember seeing the final when I got back home after so that one wasn't as memorable, and plus the timings of that tournament. My God, it was 6 a.m. We were having to watch these games. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all. 2006, I think, was one of those throwaway World Cups for me. 2010 could have been incredible because of it being in Africa, Ghana, the Vuvuzelas. You remember the Vuvuzelas?
Yeah, I love them.
Vuvuzelas, and then
do you know what? I think
final, man.
Listen, some of the things I regret in life is sort of missing out on certain opportunities. If I could go back in time, no matter, I know we were, wherever I was in life, I would have found a way to go to the South Africa World Cup, because that is just a once in a lifetime experience.
Yeah.
And also, even the one that happened in Brazil, the one that happened in Brazil, I actually had a friend.
2014. I know people who went, and it never crossed my mind to go even. They
do you know what? I had a friend living in Sao Paulo at the time that I went to uni with, a good friend. And he actually told me, Kofi, come and just come for. And
all you're doing is paying for your flight, right? That's all you're doing.
Dude. and I didn't go. And I'm like,
How about that?
there's certain moments in life that you just need to just ignore, not ignore everything that's happening, but you just have to grasp the opportunity in front
And
of you
and
and
I
just
think
go
I
and
think I think that's the
bring
lesson
something.
even for me this year that I learned is just that anything you want to do, just try and do it because
Yeah.
you don't know whether you'll get the opportunity to do it. Like even
Again,
like
yeah, yeah,
even Afcons, I'm always like I want to go for Afcon. I want to go for
yeah.
Afcon. You know,
Mm.
and this one at the start certainly looked like oh my god, this could be a great Afcon, especially as a Nigerian. It backfired obviously, but you just like you always want to go and be there to experience these things. Because I even remember that Mali 2002 African Nations Cup the way
Mm.
people talk about it, they said that was like one of the best African Nations Cup. And when I went to Mali years later to shoot my documentary, they were telling me that man, we still remember when people were coming, we are just opening our doors. People just come from Nigeria, come from Ghana, come from everywhere. We just let them sleep in our houses. Like I'm just like, these are
Oh,
moments that you're just like, this, these things. I don't know how long
that's
these
dope.
things will stay because of
Yeah,
insecurity and all that.
yeah,
But World Cup moments, bro. I'm excited. I'm really excited,
yeah.
man. I'm looking
But
forward to it. Yeah,
but
go for
let's
it.
let's let's delve into the
To
Qatar issues because
okay.
as much as there's been a lot of criticism leveled at them, I think there are certain areas where it is absolutely justified. Because even with limited, anyway, we can get into it. But I think
Go, no, no, no.
the
Start us off
first,
then.
yeah. So I think the first area is the whole migration workers issue.
Okay.
Now, in my view, yeah, given that prior to um, Qatar winning the World Cup, but we all know we can say for an absolute fact that Qatar is not a footballing nation. I'm not saying I should dismiss it from
I mean,
obviously
they
winning the
won
World Cup. That's not
the
the point.
Asia Cup though. They won the Asia Cup though, so
Okay.
they're not
So
exactly
when I
like
say
losers.
no,
I get what you
of
mean.
course,
I get what you
but
mean.
yeah.
I get what you mean.
So prior to that, I think they only had one stadium, working stadium at the time. So and now they have eight. So they've had to like build seven new ones. They've built a city. They've built
Built
a new metro
cities.
system.
They've
Like
built new metro system. Like they've brought in yachts and ships to act as
yeah, to
hotels,
house
just simply
people.
because.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And again, it shows if they're flexing the financial muscle to be like, we're gonna do this for this tournament, which is fine. But particularly as Africans, we know that the only way they're able to do this, fair enough, they are loaded as hell. But any logic will tell you that the people that are actually doing the grunt work are not being paid what they're supposed to be paid. Because if they
Okay.
were, no, let's be and let me give some underlying facts as well.
Mhm.
So in Qatar, from let's reading I did before this, in Qatar, the what's the emir is basically is in charge of everything. So they, in terms of legal
Yeah,
system,
it's a monarchy. Yeah.
it's a
So.
monarchy. Yeah. So he controls everything. They also have I think it's called a kafala system,
Mhm.
where so I think the actual natural citizenships are maybe 300K, 400K people.
Yeah, I
It's a
mean
country of
it's always over
1.7
20%, and then the rest are migrants. Same thing in the
are
UAE.
migrants.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what happens is they have this kafala system where when people come in, you get a work visa. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then your employers, for you to be able to leave or change jobs, you actually need, I guess, approval from your employers. Now, that in itself
Mm.
is an issue. That in itself is an issue. If I have to go and work for somebody and I can't leave that job with that person's approval, clearly that is an issue. That changes the balance of power between the employer and the employee. Now, with even without doing any research, I can sincerely believe the migrant issues that is happening in Qatar, in the sense that they're mostly employing these people from poorer nations in the Southeast Asia, East Africa, all of those places. And given they need that manpower, they will get all of them in and effectively abuse the system. Now, it's not to say that for all we know, maybe the money's been provided to the companies to actually pay these workers. But come what may, the people that are actually supposed to pay the workers, they probably won't pay them the right wages. I think, and also the other thing as well is apparently Qatar didn't have a minimum wage either. And they recently introduced one, I think it was this year or late last year.
Last
And
year.
that was last year. And that was equivalent of £1 a day, which is not
Okay.
being enforced either. So my
Yeah.
point is this. I don't think Qatar have done. I don't think Qatar are free of criticism. I think there's certain things they haven't done right. To build what they've built in the last 12 years, There is no way they could have done that, I guess, properly without any issues. And I think that is where they fall short, as much as they like to say that they haven't. I just being a logical person, that's where I feel like they've really exploited people from poorer nations. But you get
Okay. I mean, look, I think that that argument is pretty much the standard argument. I push back on it though.
Okay.
I push back on it big time because I think context is the most important thing. You see, for the most part, not for the most part, you see, there are two things that are happening. There are two types of migrants that go to Qatar, go to Saudi Arabia, go to Oman, go to Kuwait, go to the Middle East in general to try and develop these nations. There are two types of migrants. One they call expatriates, and one they call migrants. The expatriates overwhelmingly are Europeans, Americans, North Americans, white people, for the lack of a better word, who are paid, who are paid a competitive salary in terms of where they live versus where they are going to. So if they're coming from America, it's competitive in America and wherever else, Qatar, wherever. So those ones are attracted to work on the top end, and they have no complaints with it. Especially since, in many cases, the tax havens in the Middle East mean I'm not paying taxes, I get to earn more money. When you juxtapose that with the economic migrants who are coming from overwhelmingly third world countries, India, with large populations, by the way, 1 billion people in India, with coming from Eastern Africa, coming from Western Africa. When you compare the nations that they're coming from to where they're going to in terms of GDP, what they will be earning back home versus what they're earning at Qatar are not even competitive. They're not even on the same wavelength. Because it's the fact that they're able to go there and earn means that they're able to send something back and stay there. Now, I'm not saying that Qatar not having a minimum wage until last year is a good thing. I'm not necessarily saying that. But I'm saying, again, put this thing in context. This is a fairly new country who has only recently decided we need to get it in the world. And like any smart business person, you say, okay, let me get the best of the people who have done this before. Let me pay them whatever I need to pay them to bring them over. And let me pay as little as possible for the lower end. But again, it's not as if they're paying them a wage that is equivalent to slavery. And I know there is that whole industry that happens.
Surely it must arguably
but I think,
it is, but we'll get into that.
But I think I mean, I find it very, very like hypocritical to say that these nations like Europe, in Europe, for instance, who are essentially built their wealth of the industrial revolutions off the back of enslavement of people, that just because it happened 300 years ago, should have the audacity to criticize a nation who's essentially not enslaving people, but using as cheap migrants, as cheap labor as possible to build their nations. I don't think it's stupid. I think it's just intelligent. But I think it's arrogant of people in Europe to be like, oh, what you're doing is wrong. That, did you see the Gary Neville piece? The recent
I haven't seen it, but you told me about it.
I think you have to watch it because he'd been there 2-3 years ago to see how the development was going, criticizing and attacking this thing.
Yeah.
Then he goes there and he goes to talk to wealthy French restaurateurs and hoteliers, and he's like, "Oh, why don't you have a minimum wage?" He's like, "Well, we keep people working in the same place and we keep all the salaries the same." Now, I don't agree with that per se because you can't build competition. Because if you're against, you work in a restaurant here, that restaurant pays the same wage, you just stay. But the people that go there, just like us, Kofi, for lack of a better word, me and you are economic migrants. Our parents weren't born here. We came here. And we've had to make our way. Whatever it is we've had to do, we've had to do it. We took it. We weren't entitled to the benefits that people were getting. We weren't entitled to anything. We grafted. And that's why we're still here. But we knew it coming in. Yes, these migrants know it's no. Let me finish. These migrants know it's coming in. The Qataris know it's coming in. To think that the world is a kumbaya place and everybody just treats everybody the same. The minimum wage in this country, I would argue that based off the cost of living, the minimum wage here is not enough to survive on. You can't survive on it in England. You cannot survive on it based on the cost of living. because you earn £8 or whatever it is an hour. Let's say you're in London, for example. Let's say you're in London and they make it £9 an hour to leave your house. If you want to get to work on time, not relying on taking 3 buses, you take the train in London, you've lost £6 or £7. So your first hour's money is gone. You work 6 or 7 hours, maybe you get paid in total 7 times £9, about £63. Undoubtedly, you'll be taxed. You'll get taxed. Let's say you're the tax man, by the way. So of that £63, maybe you walk away with 48, something like that.
Yeah.
Right? £48 for the day. Your rent most likely will be about, in the course of a month, probably if you're even in a house share.
Okay, please don't walk me through the whole expense of London life.
No, because it's important to understand. No, it's important to understand. Because,
I understand.
Whereas these people in Qatar, say my country, Nigeria, because I've traveled. I was on a bus in Mali with people that were coming from Libya and people going to Libya as economic migrants, if you want to call them that. These people that go through the Sahara, the trans-Saharan route to try and get to Libya and then try and get to Europe. I've seen there was a small boy, I think I told you this story when I came back. It was overwhelming. It's a 20-year-old boy. He said he came all the way back from Libya to come and collect the equivalent of, because somebody owed him the equivalent of about £75. He came all the way because that £75, he needs it so he can take it back to Libya and maybe he'll add some money and that'll be able to buy his way to Europe. So you have to put it in context. Okay. So these people, and just before you do that, I just wanted to I just put up GDP per capita for Qatar and India, because I think India tends to have the majority of migrants in that part of the world. GDP per capita in India as of 2021 is 2,277. 2277.
Yeah.
GDP per capita for Qatar is 61,276. Now, for the same year. So even if you adjust that, even if you tweak it, whatever, one way or another, Qatar is a wealthier country. So chances are these people are not getting paid the equivalent of the equivalent they'll be paid back home. They'll getting paid enough so they can send money back home to their people. So on that basis, I don't want to criticize the Qataris too much. I'm sure they can do better. But I think it's too easy for people in the West to be like, oh, you guys are doing the wrong thing. You're mistreating people, blah, blah, blah. So that's my point.
So, all right, let me jump in a little bit. So I think first of all, as you said, context is key. So where the economic migrants pre-World Cup, I get your point. It's a free market. People will be able to pay whatever they need to pay. And people go into it knowing that, right? Mm-hmm. But context is key. So let's look at the context of the World Cup. I'm not talking about the general economic migrant. We're talking specifically for the World Cup.
I don't think you can separate the
No, you have to. We have to, because again, the criticism. No, hold on. I'll tell you why. One, because the criticism is leveled at the World Cup, the migrant workers building the stadium. That's one. And two, I'll explain further. But the other thing I also want to mention is, let's also try and split the criticism of the West with actual criticism of the migrant issue, because I get what you mean about the criticism of the West. I.e., they've done the dirty work themselves, but now are pointing fingers. I think that's a separate topic, because
I think they've built their status to be the dominant, for lack of a better word, the dominant part of the world. The dominant part of the world. They've built their wealth essentially off the backs of enslavement, and have been able to parlay it into an empire, into such a way that the way that they work is so well established that you can't even criticize anything that they do, right? Like it's just the world. It's just the world market. Whereas these are countries that are essentially building up what they're doing. And I'm not criticizing, and I'm not necessarily saying, I didn't
land yet. Go for it. So hold on. To address this specific point, I understand what you mean in terms of how the West have built their wealth and their circumstances on enslavement, right? And therefore it is, hypocritical that they then point at somebody else that is on the come up doing what is perceived as a similar thing. I understand that. But again, the reason why I want to split these two things, because that is a separate argument, because you can't say that just because I've done something bad, that means if somebody else is doing something bad, it cannot be pointed out. Fair enough, maybe it cannot come from the West, But I can say that, okay, this is a bit messed up. But anyway, let's just put that to one side. On the migrant workers issue, right? I get the importance of free economics. I've actually done a bit of research into the migrant workers going there, and there's actually a guy, I think it was a Kenyan guy that actually ended up starting a vlog because of the conditions that he was put through when he went there. So what actually happens is, before they go there, they are given a contract that says you're going to earn X amount, right? When they get there, and before they go, they obviously have to pay money and everything to go there. So when people are making the decision, they're thinking, okay, I'm going to have to borrow money to pay these guys for this recruitment service. And then when I go, I'm expecting this much money. And as you said, normally what they're going to receive is much better than what they can earn in their country, which is why they're doing this in the first place. But when they then land in Qatar, first of all, the contract terms are changed, where they're now earning about half of what they're supposed to.
And I understand that.
Okay, and then their passports are taken away, so they can't even move. So all of these things. So those are the things, those specifics, those issues that or the exploitation that took place for these World Cup migrants. That is what I'm criticizing, not just the general economic migrant situation in Qatar. I don't have enough knowledge on the general, migrant situation.
I think,
in
and
Qatar.
I think that's
sorry. Just one other point. Just one other point. Also, I think it's important to make the point that just because if I go to Qatar, I will make more money than I can make back home, that doesn't justify every treatment that the Qataris impose on. And I think we agree on that. I know. I'm just making. I'm not saying that's what you're saying.
No way you can tell me.
Hold on. I'm not saying that's what you're saying. I'm just making the point. Because
I get it, but I think we can put that one to the side.
Okay, cool.
I think we can put that one to the side. That one is not necessary. Me and you are migrants. We know what we've done. Kofi,
this guy, you're doing it again. Let me finish. Finish.
I thought you finished now. Sorry, I didn't know. You are Ghanaians. Ghanaians are not loud enough, so I don't know whether you finished.
We should be like Nigeria.
Go for it. Sorry, carry on.
But anyway, the point I was making is, yes, eventually every migrant worker is making the decision on the basis that when they go to that new country, they are going to make more than they're making back home. However, there are levels to these things, and the problem is, when even thinking about it logically, and again, I caveat this by saying thinking about it logically, because I haven't done the research, and I'm a big person. I'm a big proponent of saying, okay, if you do the research and you have the facts, then you can come and say it. I haven't done that full research, but what I want to say, thinking about it logically, if you are existing in an environment where there are no avenues to challenge any exploitation by your employer, your actual passport is actually taken away from you, so that you literally cannot move. To move legally, you have to then go and request the permission of your employer. All those things lend itself to exploitation. And in that regard, it is not too dissimilar to slave labor, because that is effectively what the system creates. And don't forget, people will always take advantage of the system.
I don't disagree with that. I don't think we disagree about that. I think my issue, where you're misunderstanding what I'm saying is this. My issue, first and foremost, has to do with the way the West is approaching this whole conversation. I'm a migrant. You and I are migrants, Kofi. What I was trying to say is, we know what we've done in this country to stay here. We know how we've worked. And people might see our faces and think you guys are young, but we've hustled. That's what we do. That's what you have to do. You're a student, you're doing 900 things at the same time. Even now, we're hustling. For us to come from our countries to Europe to come and hustle, we know what it takes, but we also know the things that we endure. I know friends, my neighbors went to Ukraine. I know the things they went through. I also know people. I was in Dubai earlier in the year, and I talked to, I have a habit of, I like to meet my people.
Yeah.
I hear what people who have been there for 10 years have had to go through. But what I'm trying to say is, as they came there, and again, every situation is different. The Qatar World Cup stadium building is a completely different situation to people who are just moving there to try and make a better life for themselves. Essentially, this is limited or short-term migration, because ultimately you're not staying there for life. We also know that there's a sort of, for lack of a better word, there's certainly been a slave culture that has existed in parts of the Middle East that is still pervasive even today, and even in North Africa, to an extent, of African migrants. That exists too. I'm not knocking that. My issue is how the whole conversation is phrased as though these people, every single one of them, or even the majority of them, have come there against their will to come and do a job they didn't choose to do. And that is for me is a different conversation to saying that because ultimately these people are making a decision to come there. The agencies in Lagos, I'm sure they're there in Accra, where they recruit these people. You have an agent on the ground, he's like, okay, come and work in this place. No doubt, when they get there, the rules change. Ultimately. And I've heard of stories of people who are saying, they start calling home and saying, oh, please, can you come and try and get me out of this place? Can you try and get me out of this? Talk to the embassy to try and get me out of this place. There's no question that these things happen. But ultimately, and I'm looking at it from also the point of view of a football tournament and the need to build stadiums from so essentially a capitalist point of view. I need to get the best quality stadiums as quickly as possible. Okay, and this is the nuance of my argument. See how nuanced I am. You can't just look at things in one direction. You have to look at it from all sections, right? I need to build stadiums as soon as possible. I get the littlest migration. I get the smallest migration as possible. I get the cheapest labor I possibly can. Yeah. The least I can pay is what I'm going to pay. Yes, they're unregulated. Of course, they're unregulated. But I think just because there are unions that exist in different parts of the Western world and which don't exist in this part of the world, to assume that everybody has reached the point of evolution that you have in the West, where all of a sudden you can forget your past, and because you have unions and kick racism out of football, that all of a sudden you're a saint and you can start pointing the finger. My point is about pointing the finger constantly. Yes, to an extent, point the finger because then you draw attention to it. And certainly, I think even the light that's been shed about the migrants, not just by the Western media, but by migrants themselves telling their stories, I think has ensured that changes are happening. But I think we as Africans in particular, or wherever you're from, India, whatever, you have to recognize that the minute you leave the shores of your country, especially if your country is going through a situation which is unbearable for you, you have to recognize that there's a certain amount of give and take. You're risking your life in many ways.
Yeah, and we accept that. And I think most Africans, most people accept that.
And most people accept that. Most people understand that is the situation. Yeah. But again, somebody who's I've been to Dubai a few times over the last couple of years. My general feeling when I see and speak to my people is we've made the decision to come here. We'll stay here and work as much as we can. I don't like it though. I don't like the way they treat us. In fact, when I was in Dubai earlier this year, they were telling me, look, there's now a passport migration, which is in the sense that it's no more about your race. It's about which passport do you have. That will give you more money. I work in education. A lot of my colleagues have moved from here to go and work in fact, just recently as August, a friend of mine moved with her whole family, a Nigerian girl. And they were like, look, in the private schools, they tend to employ strictly people with a British, American, foreign passport, European, EU passport. But in the local schools, where the government essentially funds everything, in order to maintain discipline, they go and get people largely from Jamaica and places like that, because those places we can pay them less, but we can get the discipline standard to where we need to. Yeah. So everybody's exploiting this.
Yeah,
make no mistake.
It's not dissimilar to BSL actually. What we
it's
had
not
in BSL.
The school we went to. They brought these European teachers to come and teach. They pay them top dollar, but the staff that worked in the school, the locals. Now I would say. And it's not the best thing to say, but I would say that their wages were good enough for them to want to stay there. In comparison to what they would have been earning outside. So I think we need to just be very, very careful with how we phrase these arguments, as if this thing is just like, it's pure exploitation. Because if you want to talk about exploitation, look no further than the belly of the beast. Look no further. So any other points?
No, and I get that, and I think this is also one of the reasons why I enjoy speaking to you about these things, because you being a historian, you bring the full picture, as you said, into it, and I get that, I mean, I think, I understand.
Okay. All right, cool. So I think we can end an argument without it being an argument today. Excellent. All right. So what I wanted to do quickly before we wrap up, because Time flies when you're having fun.
Wow, it's already an hour. Okay.
Yeah. So what I wanted to do very quickly is let's actually go into the World Cup, because there's a lot of hype about this World Cup. Who's going to win? Who are the favorites, and so on. And I think there's so many intangibles. I think the fact that it's happening in the middle of a European football season, but also coupled with the fact that it's taking place in a different part of the world at a time of the year when people ordinarily would be in the middle of playing football, and the teams in different parts of the world will be at the end of their seasons. There's so many intangibles. So I think there are some interesting conversations that could be had regarding who moves forward and so on. So I think should we
win the World Cup?
Let's get Ghana to win the World Cup.
Ghana to win the World Cup. That's a must. That's a definite.
And also one thing we can look forward to, at least for the next World Cup, is the 44 teams. We moved to the 44 teams.
Oh yeah, they've expanded.
So we can expand the amount of African teams being represented. I think it's like 8.
How many?
Teams.
I think
it's 8. Which to me I think is still not unfair, because I think Europe disproportionately has shed loaded like probably 50%, 40 or 50% of the World Cup teams are European actually. So that needs to change too. But they've expanded it to include more of Africa, Asia, and so on. So let's see how that goes. Personally, I don't like it being that much, but whatever. So let's go straight into the groups. Yeah. Group A consists of Qatar, Ecuador, Senegal, the Teranga Lions, and the Netherlands. Woof!
I think this should be a fairly straightforward group.
Okay.
I mean, Ecuador can pose a surprise, but I think. Oh, anyway, I hope it's a more straightforward situation.
So what do you think? How do you see it?
Okay, so I think Netherlands will be hungry because they weren't there the last time. They've got Van Gaal, who
before you do that, we got a couple of comments. Should we read the comments quickly? They're not many, but let's just go through them. Okay, cool. So Mark Omonyoko, so your argument is if I pay you enough to survive and send remittances back home, that means Qatar isn't as bad. What does he mean? So your argument is if I pay you enough to survive. Oh, I think he's referring to my.
Yeah.
I think he's referring to my comment. I think. So your argument is if I pay you enough to survive and send remittances back home, that means Qatar isn't as bad. What are you talking about? I never said Qatar is good. I'm talking about how the argument was being phrased in the first place. But thanks for the comment. Kwame Olatunji, my guy. Kwame Olatunji, please get on here and let us know. Are you Ghanaian or are you Yoruba? Where are you from? Kwame Olatunji, please let us know.
He's half and half.
Kwame is like a long time. He's always here. He said, how are you both? Very interesting conversation. Thank you, my brother Kwame. Thank you so
much. Expand on just, I guess, re-emphasize your point for Mark, I think. Because I think he misinterpreted what you were saying.
Okay, well, what's my point now? Okay, I think the main thing I was trying to get across is it's the way the conversation is phrased in the first place. That this is just pure exploitation. It's pure exploitation of migrants. Whereas it's more nuanced than that. My main frustration is the people who are leveling the frustrations. Mostly European people who essentially have had a foothold over the World Cup for how many times did you say Europe had held? You said 22 out of 22 World Cups. 11. So 50% of the World Cups have been held in Europe.
Well, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Including South America, yeah.
Okay, so whatever it is, 50% of the World Cups have been held in Europe. They've had a stranglehold over the World Cup, and they've been able to do it because they have the infrastructure that they were able to. The infrastructure that they were able to hold on to creating the World Cup, right? To host the World Cup. And the question is, no one's ever gone back and really criticized them for how they got their infrastructure in the first place and how they've essentially, like again, England winning the World Cup in '66 is really not winning the World Cup. It's not even fair to say that they won the World Cup because it wasn't a World Cup. It was largely a European and South American tournament. So that's really my point. Europe has 13 of 32. Oh, yeah. So 13 out of 32 teams. So what percentage is that? That's like, is that like 40? 35?
I think about 40,
so like 1/3. It's like,
right.
No, it's not even up to 1/3.
40. Bang on 40.
40%. So I was bang on 40, exactly. So 40%. See, I'm a mathematician. Somebody said it was a question of clarity. Okay, so Mark said it was a question of clarity, not a question of criticism. Okay, all right. Maybe we talk about
and I
that a
think
bit more.
no, that's fine. I think yeah. I mean, just to re-clarify, it's not to say that what Qatar is good. It's just to say that
Oh no,
they're operating in the same way that every nation
everybody's done it.
operates. Everybody
And this
operates,
is
and the
why,
thing
maybe Mark, I don't know if you know, at the top of the show, we were talking about a documentary called The Fall of FIFA. And they essentially talked about how Qatar, the whole narrative for the whole documentary, and also for this World Cup, is that Qatar bought the World Cup. And the way they did it was so horrible and blah, blah, blah. They bribed everybody. But at the end of the documentary, what they explain is that's how even Germany, that's how all the other countries had done the same thing by putting money in the pockets of the executives. So that is really what phrased my argument in the first place, that there's no doubt that with the fallout of that, every sort of criticism will be leveled at Qatar. Where me personally, I'm glad to see the World Cup not happening in Europe or North America. I'm glad. In fact, I think if we could stay, I'm not really a fan of Asia per se, like Far East, because I think those ones mess up with the times. But I think keeping it in that region of Middle East, North Africa, and Europe, I think, well, not Europe, but that region I tend to like a lot more because it's, it's not fair either.
It's exactly. If we're opening it up, it's like freedom. You can't have partial freedom.
Well, there you go.
Have full freedom, or you don't have freedom at all.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. And then last comment, Kwame again. He said Senegal, Cameroon, Ghana, anyone. I don't mind.
We'll claim all of those countries.
I'm with you. I'm claiming all of them. In fact, I've ordered a jersey for Cameroon, jersey for Senegal, jersey for Ghana. For Ghana,
another one for Ghana.
Wow, the white one.
Wow,
the white one.
The white one. Okay, not that. you can put like a badge or something over there.
So let's go through the groups, my brother. So Qatar, Ecuador, Senegal, Netherlands. Who have you got?
Yeah, so I was saying that Netherlands, because they missed the last World Cup, they should be hungry. Also, they've got Van Gaal in charge, who, despite being a bit old school, I think will be because Van Gaal actually is an interesting manager. He is very old school, yet he really sort of encourages certain but it's very evolved in certain aspects, particularly with pushing kids. Because remember, he was the coach when Ajax won the Champions League.
Ajax
team. That young, exactly. So he
that
knows
young Ajax team and the follow-ups, because Kanu came out of that group, of that team. Young Kluivert came out of that group. Like so many,
all of those guys. And the thing is,
they were like 2 finals in a row or something. Yeah.
And what he realizes is there's something about youthful exuberance that the youth don't even understand. Just express themselves. They don't overthink it. If they've got the talent and they're given the opportunity, they'll just do what they're supposed to do. Sometimes with age, with experience, with maturity, as something that's fairly straightforward, you can overthink it and psych yourself out. But with youth and the talent, then so I think that makes them very tricky, because a lot of their squad is actually young team, everything. So I think they should top the group, in my view. And I'm hoping that, they should do, thinking of it historically as well. But I would obviously prefer Senegal to top the group. But I think ultimately it would be Senegal and Netherlands going through to the next round.
Okay. Well, my opinion, as you can imagine, is going to be a little bit.
Oh, by the way, keep showing the group because I can't see it.
Yeah. But let me just show you. My this is Senegal, part of the group, of course. My opinion is a bit different, my brother. I think, and let's just go back to the group. I think you're going to be surprised by Netherlands. I think that they say, "Cometh the hour, cometh the man."
Sorry, T. Let me pause you there for a second. Kwame made a very good point, actually, and it kind of supports what he was saying. He said, "I was listening to LBC today."
Yeah.
And for those that don't know LBC is probably arguably
it's a
radio station that you can even come across.
Yeah,
I was listening to LBC today.
London-based radio station. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was listening to LBC today. Even Europeans came on the radio and said the Western world is having double standards.
Well, thank you.
Which is quite interesting.
Well, that's it. And I think that that is part of my point. That's the greater part of my point. Is like let's just be careful that we are not because can I just say I'm half Rwandese. I'm from Rwanda. 28 years ago, when my country was my country was being devastated, and my mother was losing relatives by the minute. The world never came to its assistance. Never. For 3 months, close to 1 million, if not more, were killed. 28 years later, that team is sponsoring Arsenal, sponsoring PSG. They have transformed themselves to become one of the best, I think, top 10 nations in the world to do business. They have moved their infrastructure to a new place where they can create, I think it's 99% healthcare for the masses. But there's incredible criticism for their head of state. A man who went in the trenches and fought as a guerrilla soldier to liberate his country when no one else in the world wanted to help. Now he's a dictator. He's a benevolent dictator. He's autocratic. He's this, he's that. But the nation is moving forward. He gets the criticism on a daily basis by the Western media, by the West. Just go online and see him on Bloomberg being criticized, CNN, all these different things. So I understand also how this double standard is played out when it doesn't suit their interests. And Qatar has become a global competitor in the world of football. And it doesn't have to be just football. In business, period. They're an oil, especially Russia shutting down their oil with however percentage of oil they have that aids Europe. All of a sudden, Boris Johnson flies to Saudi Arabia to have to do deals with people his nation is constantly criticizing. They don't like it. It's uncomfortable. So if you can criticize Paul Kagame for liberating his people and then transforming his nation into something which allows you and your people to do better business, then how much easier is it to criticize Qatar? So I'm not saying Qatar is a saint. I have no interest in saying they're saints. Doesn't benefit me because it's not true. My issue is always with the nuances, the context of the argument. Who is leading the argument? If this was an argument where migrants were out there constantly protesting about the way they were being treated, that's one thing. But we're talking about people sitting from privileged positions, pointing when they themselves, Gary Neville, former Manchester United player, done 2 documentaries criticizing this nation, but will go and work for beIN Sports for the World Cup. He will take a check from them. I think that is where, for me, it's a non-starter. These conversations are a non-starter. And that's where my pushback comes from. So anyway, back to the World Cup predictions.
Yeah. Sorry, back to the groups. So you're going to give us your verdict on Group A.
So I think this is going to go differently. I think Qatar will have a good showing.
Do you think so?
I think Qatar will have a good showing. And I think that Netherlands will flop.
Ooh,
I have a feeling that the pressure, they went in the last World Cup. And frankly, I look at their team, and yes, they're all in important places. But I think their team is not as good as we think. I think it's not as exciting. These players are not as exciting as they were, say, 2 or 3 years ago.
Well, not exciting, not to even leave the group. Interesting.
I think we've seen numerous times in World Cups where top teams have not left their group.
I know.
It happens. It's the World Cup. I have a feeling something like that will happen. Okay. I also have a feeling that Senegal, without Sadio,
that'll be tough.
Without Sadio Mane, at least to begin with, will struggle. But let's not forget that Senegal themselves, they have a good enough spine that when you add the additional pressure of nationhood, will rise. This is the team that won the African Nations Cup. They have the second best, at least according to Ballon d'Or, second best player in the world. At least in the rank in the dressing room. They have Aliou Cisse, not the best footballer in the world, but has been a consistent coach for 6-7 years. We've all seen, remember what happened with Mancini in Italy last year. Been with them a long time. Okay, you could argue the same thing with Van Gaal. But I think even when I saw Van Gaal's press conference the other day, when I saw just how critical he was about Qatar, I'm just like, these things never end well when you start like this. You're just being too critical. Okay. So I'm thinking Netherlands might be surprised that they don't get out the group. And I think Ecuador and Qatar are clearly, I think I can also see a world where Senegal doesn't make it through and Qatar and Ecuador do. I can also see that
one. Yeah, I can't see Qatar going to make it.
But I would say this. Qatar, I think, has trained, because I think their season ended a while ago. So their players have been together for a while. Right? A lot of them came from that Aspire Academy. A lot of the players have grown up with each other. This is also a pivotal moment for them in their history. And I know hosts very rarely, actually not very rarely. Russia did it 4 years ago, but hosts can surprise people.
They're energized. No, I get that. And
Ecuador and Senegal, again, I think those three teams will shock people. I think Netherlands is there to flop. That's what I think.
Okay.
So I would say, so let me give my predictions.
So I want you to give two predictions.
Yeah.
One is what you think will happen, and one is what you hope will happen.
Okay, what I hope will happen is that Senegal and Qatar go through. What I think will happen is that Senegal and Qatar will go through. It's the same thing.
Interesting.
I think so. Okay.
I
think my brain doesn't tell me Netherlands is like I think there's on paper and there's reality. World Cup is different.
I understand that. Do you know what? I think the one thing that I strongly disagree with you on is Qatar, because yes, they've got the home advantage, they've got that energy they're going to get from the crowd, and yes, perhaps their team have had more time together, but again, that doesn't take the fact that where do any of their players play? Do any of them play in the top 5 leagues?
I think the top 5 leagues of Europe is one thing to say that. It's another thing to say how is the team.
I know. Listen, I'm not saying it means everything, but it does mean something. And I think to say that they will get ahead.
We have seen examples in history where things like that have just not been the case.
Of course.
Again, the Cameroon team in 1990 were all amateurs, mostly playing in Cameroon. And they were able to go as far, really push England to almost get a semi-final place in the World Cup. Ghana's team of 2010, as much as they were playing in Europe, they were not the top tier teams in Europe either. I'm sorry.
But we had people playing in the Premier League and stuff. No, we had people. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but anyway, I accept your prediction. No, hold on, it's okay.
What I'm trying to say is top tier, simply playing in a top tier league does not equate to a top tier player. Look at our Nigeria team. Our coach, our captain was in the Premier League, and got relegated, and he's marching out to lead Nigeria. It's not. It doesn't mean anything.
I'm not saying it. I wouldn't say it doesn't mean anything. I get that it doesn't mean everything, but it definitely means something. But anyway, I take your point.
I'll take that. Maybe that. Okay, maybe yeah. I'll agree to that. I'll agree to that. Okay, next group. So you've gone Netherlands and Senegal, right? I've gone Senegal and Qatar.
Yeah.
Group B: England, Iran, United States.
Why are you laughing? Why are you laughing?
Soccer. That's why. Because it's soccer. Let me just say this. I think England. I don't know how these things happen. They say it's done at random. I don't know. They say it's done at random. But you put England, you take out one of the teams from Group A and put England there. All of a sudden, you're questioning, can England get out this group? So I don't know how these things happen at random. Last time they had Tahiti or whatever it was that they had last World Cup. I was just like, how? Tunisia, Anyway, England, Iran, United States, Wales. Go for it. What do you think? How do you see it?
So, what I think will happen is England. I'm split between US and Wales. What I think will happen is England and Wales will go through. Actually, yeah, that's what I think will happen. What I hope will happen is actually England and Wales going through.
Yeah.
Because the US, I think, as much as they have a decent, a few top players, I think the best of them, in my view, being Alphonse Davies. Alfonso Davis, the left back from
He's
Bayern. I think he's
no, he's
excellent.
Canadian, isn't he? He's not American.
Oh, he's Canadian. No, you're right. You're right. You're right.
Yeah, he's Canadian.
Oh, okay. No, in that case,
Yeah,
ignore that.
Pulisic is who you're thinking about for Chelsea.
Pulisic is the other one. Yeah, but
that's their top guy. Yeah.
Yeah, but even he hasn't been on form anyway, so I fail to see. But anyway, who knows? But that's my prediction. England.
Personally, I think US will finish last in this group. Personally, I think the best result they'll have the best result they'll have is they'll draw England. They'll draw with England. I think. Yeah. I think England.
Iran. Sorry, go ahead. No, I'm listening.
No. Finish. Finish what you're saying.
No, I was going to say.
Okay, let me just say this. Let me just say this. The reason why I think US will finish bottom is because Carlos Queiroz coached Iran in the last World Cup. He's also their coach in this World Cup, former United guy. He's a tactician. He was very unlucky in the last World Cup. Very unlucky. I think this time around, again, it's not home field advantage, but it's similar. He will definitely feel like the home team when they play England, US, and Wales. Iran and US have a history. I don't know if you're aware. If you watch the movie Argo, if you want to understand the history of the Shah and the Ayatollah the Shah of Iran being removed and then the Ayatollah put back in, and then there's a kidnapping of those American embassy workers in the 1980s or late 1970s. I think there's a history there. Iran will come good against the US. I think Wales is the one that's the wild card for me, because if Bale is firing, I know he just did well. He scored a goal in the final for the MLS thingy. If he's firing and they play well, it's his last World Cup. I just think they'll come up short. I think so. I would go with Iran and England in this one.
Yeah, I think with US. What I was going to say about Iran is, did you hear because there's a bit of controversy about Queiroz's coming back for a second term, because he only came back in September. They just fired. Remember, they had a coach that actually got Iran qualified for the World Cup, and then literally months before the World Cup, they got rid of him and brought Queiroz back in. So,
which African teams do all the time.
But I still do that too. Yeah, but I think as much as I like Queiroz because he was a former assistant at United, I don't see them. I don't see US being lost. I think US will beat them. I think England will be lost.
Fair enough.
But anyway,
fair enough. So you've got England and US.
No, England and Wales.
Oh, England and Wales.
I think Wales will perform their heroics again, because this is their first World Cup.
And I wouldn't be shocked if that happened. And I wouldn't be shocked. To me, they're the wild card in that group. They could go either way.
Yeah.
But I think England too could also. England was definitely getting out of this group. First or second. First or second.
Maybe the second is quite embarrassing.
I don't think it's a given. I don't think it's a given. I think I could see I could perceive a world where they draw with the US, maybe beat Wales or draw with Wales, and maybe beat Iran. I could see a world like that, which is really 4 or 5 points. I could see a world where that happens. Whereas I could see a world where Wales shocks Iran and shocks US and gets 6 points and loses to England. I could see that world too. So first or second for England. Should we move on? Okay, so Group C: Argentina, Saudi, Mexico, Poland.
Group C, you go.
Lord have mercy. No, you go first. You go first. Where is my?
I did the first two first. Go on.
Group. This man,
the GOAT. The GOAT.
He is definitely not where he used to be. He is definitely not what he used to be. But I think he has an esprit. A spirit is reborn. And I think because of that, there is no question Argentina tops this group. Maybe even with 9 points. Maybe. I think they've been lackluster.
He's been on fire this season so far.
It's not just him. I think it's the collective. The collective team is also very solid. Who did they thrash 5-0 the other day? Who did they just beat?
Was it Nigeria?
Friendly. No, Nigeria. Nigeria was Portugal. We don't have to talk about that. But anyway, they just beat somebody. I can't remember. But I think
Saudi Arabia.
For me, Argentina and no, it wasn't Saudi Arabia. I think you can't play Saudi Arabia now. I think Argentina topped this group. second place. I think because of their legacy in World Cups, I think Mexico
It was UAE, by the way.
just that's it. Mexico just trumps Poland. Just. I think Lewandowski, because the last World Cup in a friendly just before the World Cup, Nigeria beat Poland like badly. I know it's just before the World Cup's a friendly, it doesn't really matter, but I just don't think Poland is able to put it together in tournaments. So I think Argentina and Mexico will take it. What about you?
Yeah, so I agree. I think Argentina and Mexico. Poland, again, just off the top, outside of Lewandowski, I'm trying to think who else would be in that team. I can't really, and he's always been their game changer. Whenever you're able to sort of nullify Lewandowski, you sort of take away. But actually, there's a guy. Actually, no, I think he's Serbia. There's a guy, Mudrik, something or other. He plays for.
He's not Polish. He's not Polish.
Shakhtar. He's not Polish, is he? Okay, because that guy is insane, man. That guy is gifted. Anyway, yeah, no, so I agree. Argentina, Mexico.
Okay.
All right.
So the next one is. Oh, sorry. The next one is France, Australia, Denmark, Tunisia.
It's an interesting
I went
group.
first, the last one. You give me that one.
Sure. So I think France will easily qualify from this group. For between Australia, Denmark, and Tunisia, that's quite interesting because arguably Denmark is the better of the three teams, but I think they're all not too far away from each other. I think on any day, Tunisia can beat any two of them. And similarly, it could go the other way around. So what I hope is it will be France and Tunisia, but I expect that probably be France.
You hope France and Tunisia. Okay.
I hope France and Tunisia. But I expect that will be France and Denmark. Because the Danes also have a way of squeezing through. Because even the last Euros, I think they got to like second round or was it quarters even?
Right. Okay. Well, I have it again quite different to you. I think Denmark arguably potentially tops this group. I think France is missing a good midfield. They have no Kante, no Pogba. They're firing up front, but they will concede goals. And I think with the form that this boy at United, whatever his name is in, the spirit, especially after what happened to him in the last Euros, they will put it together. Okay. Australia, I don't think is going to do much, but I can see France drawing against Australia, beating Tunisia, drawing against Denmark, and getting 5 points. But I can see Denmark beating Tunisia, beating Australia, and getting 6 points. So France goes through, but I think they're second, and I think Denmark goes through first. Either way, it's France and Denmark. No question. Okay. Group E. Spain, Costa Rica, Alemania, and Japan. This one. If you talk about hard groups to call, if you talk about hard groups to call, it's this one.
Interestingly, I only think it's hard not because of the involvement of Costa Rica.
It's not because
more Costa Rica than Japan.
Even. It's for me, it's Costa Rica and Japan that you don't know what to expect. You just don't know.
I don't think Japan will be that much of a threat. I think Costa Rica will be more of a threat than Japan.
Fair enough.
That's what I think. But
one might be more than the other, but I think Japan can cause. Do you remember the last World Cup? I think Japan was in. Was it Japan? Or was it Korea? Excuse me. Korea was in a group with Senegal, Colombia.
The last World Cup was the South Korea World Cup.
No, the 2018. I think Senegal was in a group with Korea, Colombia, and one other team. And literally, I think 2 or 3 teams. I think Senegal got knocked out because of fair play, but they all had the same amount of points, same goal difference. Do you remember?
Okay.
So Senegal got knocked out. This group looks like that type of thing for me.
Yeah.
I think Luis Enrique has been doing all this stuff on Twitch, trying to be funky and stuff lately. And the way he's talking about his team, I still don't think the Spain team is fully evolved. I don't think they haven't stepped away fully from where they were. There's a lot of transitioning going, so I think they could mess up.
Do you know what I think their problem is? I think their only real problem is up front. I think everywhere else,
they're kind of covered.
Sort of got them. Yeah, they're covered. but they don't have somebody to put the ball in the back of the net, which is tricky. They've got inside forwards or wingers that could do that, but they don't have like a Torres or a Raul or
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
a
yeah. I
Focal
think, I think,
center striker that can do that. They've got
I
Morata,
think,
but he's sporadic.
yeah, and
He's hit
Morata's
and miss.
older now, and he's I mean, look,
Yeah,
I think Spain has enough firepower to go through. Uh, Germany, I don't know how effective they are, but I think
yeah,
they go through too. I
yeah.
think ultimately this is a tough group to call, but I'll still go with the traditional expectation, which is Germany and Spain.
There
Just
was I was listening to a podcast, Football Ramble. They're talking doing a World Cup preview, and they mentioned this stats that shocked me. I think Germany,
Mhm.
even more so than Brazil, have actually been to more finals than Brazil in terms of World Cups.
Oh yeah, don't forget Germany did between 1980 and 1990 did 3 World Cup finals. Finals. Remember they were West Germany at the time.
Yeah,
3 World Cup
and
finals.
that's
So
the
they're a
finals.
serious team.
But the thing is, on top of that, on top of that, I think for I forget the stat now. What was 80? I forget the percentage. But literally, they always seem to find a way, no matter how terrible they start. They always seem to find a way to reach the latter stage. By the latter, I'm not even talking quarter. I'm talking semis.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Now,
yeah.
I
I
wish
mean,
I
it's a
had it. I
different
wish I
era
could
now.
remember
It's a
exactly what it
different
is.
era. It's a different
Yeah, but
era
even
now. I don't think they can, but I think
no,
they
but
can
even
always get out their group though. Yeah.
yeah. But even think about the recent World Cups that they've been in. They've I can't recall a time where they've not reached at least quarterfinal.
Mm, mm, mm.
So, but anyway, so I guess prediction
When
for
they've
that
crashed out of the in the group stages.
group stage, yeah.
I
Anything is
think they could be.
possible.
I think they could be efficient enough to get 5 points. That's 1 win
Yeah.
and 2 draws. I think they can be efficient enough for that. I don't. I can see that they won't. They might not lose. Um,
Okay.
all right, Mark has actually just made a prediction that I was going to make later, but I'll come to it
Okay.
in a
I
second.
haven't
Group
seen it
F.
yet.
Group
Sorry.
F.
So sorry. Just for Group E, my prediction would be Spain and Germany as well.
Good, good, good. Belgium, Canada. Group F. Belgium, Canada, Morocco, Croatia.
All right. Let me. I'll be
So
quick with this one.
okay.
What I want, and what I expect. So what I want would be for Croatia and Belgium. Sorry, what I expect would be for Croatia and Belgium. Sorry, and what I want would be for Belgium and Morocco. This guy, I want all the African teams to progress. Basically, let me
Yeah,
just put that out there right
yeah, you have to qualify which one you consider African, by the way. But anyway,
now.
my wife and daughter in Morocco, so there's a certain
Don't speak
uh,
ill
you
before
know,
somehow they go missing, and then you have to
before
make a
let
call
me
that
be
says
careful before they tell
you,
me,
you, you, you have a
Habibi, we
very
saw your
particular
prediction.
sentence.
Anyway, I think Croatia is one that people would expect to go through, but I think it's an aging team. I
Very.
think Morocco with Hakimi and that that boy at Chelsea, I don't forget his name now, whatever his
Oh,
name is.
Ziyech.
Yeah, I know his name. I was just saying. I think Canada, Alfonso Davis, first World Cup they've been in a while. I
Mm.
think Belgium is efficient enough to beat them. They have enough of a squad to beat them. I think they've got Kevin De Bruyne. I think at the latter stages they really need Hazard to step up, but I think he's dead. Personally, I think that Hazard is gone, but I think he might
I
just
know.
kick
No,
into
no, no,
full
no,
gear.
no.
He might just do
I
something
think
this
he's
one.
gone.
I
I
think
think he's
Lukaku
gone
has
as
it.
well.
I think Lukaku has a lot to prove also. But again, this is also an aging team in that sense.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
what I mean is their war, their battle, they have battle scars. So I would go with Belgium. I don't want to say Croatia because I just think they're too old. I would
Can I
prefer
say
to say
something about
Morocco.
Croatia?
But
The one thing I'll
what
say
did
about
Morocco do
Croatia
at the
is
AFCON, by the way? Sorry. What did Morocco do at the AFCON? They got to quarters, right? They got knocked out in the
I,
quarters.
I think so. I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they got knocked out in the quarters, but on penalties, I think. I think Morocco. I think these Arab and Middle Eastern teams, bro. I think.
Nah.
Ha!
I mean,
This
I
is
want Morocco,
this
but
group is
more
tough.
so
Oh.
than Qatar. Though. I think it is tough. I'll tell you what. The one thing about Croatia is, I think if the coach manages to utilize Modric in the same way that Italy utilized Pirlo, sort of playing that quarterback role. Because again, as you said, they're aging squad.
But you still need more than him.
If you
need people to make the runs for him.
But then the thing is, you always have all these young guys that can do the runs.
Fair enough. Yeah,
it's really if he can be sourced, they can be fed. So I think. Anyway, having said that, my push is still for my hope is Belgium and Morocco, but I expect that somehow it'll be Belgium and Croatia. Yeah. Also, deep down, I really want Alphonso Davies to have a good World Cup, man. I really like that guy. Very humble guy. Very, very excellent player. Excellent player.
Because he's Ghanaian.
I think it's too. Because he's
Ghanaian. Just be honest.
It's too early for Ghanaian.
Okay, so Belgium.
No, it's not just that.
No, I know. I really find it hard to call this group, man. I think it will be. I think Croatia could crash out. I think Belgium and Morocco. I think Belgium and Morocco. Yeah, I think Belgium and Morocco. All right, Group G: Brazil, Serbia, Switzerland, Cameroon. Let me tell you something. I think Cameroon is back.
Indomitable. Is it indomitable?
Indomitable. I think they're back. I saw them at the AFCON, and I was like, "You guys play like the Boomers and the Injitap, Jeremy, all those. You play like those guys. They bullied everyone in the AFCON. Abubakar is up front. Okay. They've got I think you only know probably maybe Choupo-Moting. Matip decided
he's actually been on form. He's been on form
the last few years. So I think they have a good show. I hope they get out. But all these Serbia and Switzerland, they're always these tricky teams. They're so tricky, these Serbia and Switzerland. But I say this man has the World Cup of his life. This man has the World Cup of his life, I think.
It's such a shame about, well, I say it's a shame. Maybe it's not even I'm exaggerating, but maybe I'm using the wrong term. But this guy, look at what this season, it's almost like something clicked. Anyway, it's World Cup year. So, but look at how he's been consistent and on it from the jump for PSG this season.
But can I just say something?
And sorry, just before you do that. Yeah. Okay, go on. Actually, what are you going to say?
No, what I was just going to actually say is, and we've had these in our WhatsApp group, we have these random chats. I think people underestimate just what this guy has done. Have you seen his numbers for Brazil and PSG?
Yes.
This guy is no joke. The problem is he's not played for a team that's been considered elite in the sense of traditionally elite. And B, he's not set the world on fire in finals. Otherwise, this guy's
I think it's actually less. I completely agree, but I think it's less of underestimating him than rather because we know how good he is. I mean, think about it. We can, between me and you, we can agree that he's had very slightly above average seasons for PSG, and yet look at his numbers. The thing is, this guy set such a standard very early on that we only expected it to keep going up, and so when he's not reaching those, he automatically looks like a disappointment.
Okay, but let me ask you this question.
Still stands against a lot of people. In fact,
let me ask you this question. Do you think if you put yourself in his position at the time, you're in Messi's shadow, you're doing amazing things, but you're in Messi's shadow, do you go to PSG?
I wouldn't go to PSG. Not at that time. I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't.
I would.
And hold on. I'll tell you.
I would, and that's the difference. And that's the difference.
I'm not saying he shouldn't move. No, hold on. I'm not saying he shouldn't move. If you want to leave Messi's shadow, I get that, and it takes somebody that backs themselves and somebody that knows that I have the skills to potentially become the best in the world to do that. So I rate that. My argument is don't go to PSG because PSG were now.
No, but that's the offer that's on the table. It's essentially to build a franchise around you.
No.
Oh, you don't think that's what it is?
Because
you don't think they built the franchise around him?
No, I think that's.
I think Mbappe was a lucky accident. They didn't build it for Mbappe.
No, hold on. I'll tell you what. So yes, they built the structure around him, but the problem is they didn't build the structure right enough because
that's fine.
Look at what they
but him making the decision to go and them not being able to build the right structure is not necessarily connected to him. I'm saying to you, you are in his message. They give you that offer. We're going to pay you God's salary to go to PSG, are you going?
Yeah. No, and I'll tell you why. Because think about this: if he went to any other club, would they build a team around him?
No.
Any club, in my view, any club he goes to, they'll build a team around him. Which
because
club
I don't
will he
think there
go
was
to
any. I
apart
think
from
PSG was more or less, in a way, starting from scratch when he came. I think
precisely
every other team was pretty much there. You would be an addition. You will win more, but you'll be an addition. I think because again, it's
but hold
Messi.
on.
It's Cristiano Ronaldo.
My question is this:
when he left United, went to an established team. He didn't build it around him, but he added to it.
And what did they do?
And it helped. It helped with his prestige.
No, but hold on.
I know.
Hold on. T, hold on. When I say build, I don't mean they're literally going to now get the players to build. What I say build is they actually focus the tactics on getting the best out of this player they just acquired. Real Madrid literally changed their tactics so that allowed Ronaldo to score those goals. I think any team, at least with the right mind, if he came to United, he'd be the focal point. If he went to Juve, he'd be the focal point. And so I think the mistake he did was the PSG gave him painted a beautiful picture. I.e., we're going to build the team around you. And literally, technically, they did that. They just didn't do it very well. The problem is, if you go to a team that is not... fair enough, but Mbappe was just a kid. He's sort of accelerator, as you said.
Mbappe, after one season, was one of the best players at the
Not
World Cup.
lucky happenstance, but they didn't know he was going to turn into this phenomenal player that he has now.
Yeah, but I mean,
but hold on. My point is this.
It wasn't long.
First of all, even you going there with Mbappe, what does that tell you? That means your time is going to be short-lived because... Yeah. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is, if he could have either bided his time, maybe essentially what is a rebuilding project, where PSG historically were not one of the major players in Europe, but they want to get there. It's not going to be a 1-year thing. It's going to be a cycle. It's going to be 3-4 years, which, looking back, has clearly been the case. So that wouldn't help you achieve your goals. And this is one thing I like about Ronaldo.
But the question is, what are his goals? What are his goals, though? Because there's a thing about Brazilian players. There's a thing about Brazilian players also, which I think you can also use to explain why he went to PSG. There's not just Brazilian, but certain type caliber of South American players. They play to a certain extent at a high level, and then they chase the bag, right? Or they give up on the sport, or they're not disciplined enough to continue. They give themselves almost like their 20s to do everything they have to do and make as much money as they can. I think Neymar falls in that line of player, where there's a big opportunity for me to be a superstar in terms of fame and still have fun playing my football without being in the shadows of Messi and without having the pressures that I have. And he goes.
So
I would always argue this: his numbers have been amazing. And let's not forget, PSG. People just assume PSG has always dominated. They haven't. This is a relatively new thing.
Exactly, but
it's a relatively new thing.
Okay, so
wow.
So T, bro, this is backing my point up. First of all, I think Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. It was breaking up for a second.
Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think first of all, when he wanted to leave Messi's shadow, I think because remember when he was at Barca, the way he played was completely different. He was actually very selfless to the team, in addition to scoring all those amazing goals, racking up all those stats. But I think him wanting to leave the shadow of Messi was actually to establish himself as number one. I get your point about certain Brazilians where they get to a certain point, they just want to chill. And I don't think he was there yet. He actually wanted to establish himself. I think
I agree. Yeah.
Hold on. Just I beg. Let me. I think the mistake he made is he could have been smarter in terms of his choices, because if you want to be number one, you cannot go and start with PSG, because PSG will take a while to get to that point. Look at what Ronaldo did. Ronaldo went from United to Madrid because he knew no matter what, A, it's a team that's going to be competing for the high honors. B, if I'm good enough, they'll structure the team for me. When he finished there, he went to Juve. Juve were at the top then. Fair enough, there was a bit of decline, but they still won the league twice out of those 3 years. Yeah, and unfortunately now he's back at United. My point is he could have been smarter in his trajectory in terms of club choice because going now, even though PSG may have sold him a beautiful dream, that in hindsight was not the right decision. And I think once he got there and he realized that shit, no matter what I do, this is a team sport. If I don't have the spine behind me to do all of those things, I don't know. He started just chilling, and then guess what? World Cup turns up. The guy is now playing like he literally just turned 23. Like back when he was with Messi. In fact,
let me just because we're spending a lot of time on this subject. I don't know if it's like a delay, Kofi. I don't know if you can hear me. Hello? Kofi, can you hear me? What's going on? Kofi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. There was like a delay and then it paused. Yeah, I can hear you now. Okay. I can hear you now. I think it was like a delay. I mean, I just wanted to I think
maybe.
Okay, you know what? Let's move on because I think we'll end up. I think the gods are trying to tell us something about this street.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's move on to the next. Let's move on to the next.
Hear you. I can.
Yeah, there's some sort of a delay, Kofi. There's a delay. There's a problem. I think.
Oh, okay.
All right. There's a problem. All right. Let's just do the next group. So, Brazil, Serbia, Switzerland, Cameroon. Who goes through for you? We have a problem, Kofi. Something is definitely wrong with the stream. I'm not sure if it's my end or yours, but there's a problem with the stream. Okay, so what I will say is, Brazil, Serbia. I will go with Brazil. Kofi, I think
keep going. I can hear you. I don't know if you can still hear.
Yeah, I can hear you, but there's definitely something wrong with the stream. There's definitely something wrong with the stream. I can hear you fine. Yeah. Okay, no problem.
Keep going.
Brazil, Serbia, Switzerland, and Cameroon. I will go with Brazil, no question. I don't know enough about Serbia. I think Switzerland is always very consistent. I will go with my heart on this one, and I'll say Brazil and Cameroon.
Okay. All right. Can you hear me? Yeah, I'd say I want Brazil and Cameroon to go through, but I expect that would be Brazil and probably Serbia. But I'm hopeful that Cameroon will squeeze through.
Okay. Last but not the least. Ghana.
The group with the winners of the World Cup.
Portugal, Ghana, Uruguay, South Korea. Probably the group of death.
Do you know what? Let me tell you something.
Group of death.
Listen. At the start of this, I told you I had no expectations of Ghana in this tournament. Let me change my mind. As long as we beat Uruguay, we have won the World Cup.
As long as you score a penalty against them.
Between beating Nigeria to get to the World Cup and beating Uruguay at the World Cup, listen, we're winners. Forget it.
Hey, I think the fact that you beat Nigeria to get in with, frankly, a terrible team means you deserve to be at the World Cup. I think Portugal and Cristiano Ronaldo will take time to get started, but they will get through the group.
Yeah.
I think Uruguay and South Korea will have too much for Ghana.
Okay.
They just have too much for Ghana.
I
think because this is what I think. Portugal versus Uruguay or South Korea, both any team could walk away with points, either a draw. Most likely Portugal will get 3 points against at least one of them, if not both. The head-to-head with Uruguay and South Korea might be a decider, but I don't think it's enough of a decider to say Ghana goes through because I can't see Ghana beating anybody in this group. I can't.
Hold on. Let me ask something. South Korea without Hyun Sung Min, you think is still a formidable team?
I just think in terms of organization, and I remember what they did with Senegal 4 years ago. I didn't really know who they were, frankly.
Yeah.
They were able to just scrape. These teams are just efficient. You see, the problem with us in Africa is if we had the level of efficiency that European and Asian teams had, I don't think we will really be struggling in the World Cups. We'll constantly be getting out. But I think as a policy, African Union policy of 2022, we need to get African teams out of the group stages. It needs to be an African policy. We need a minimum of 2. We need a minimum of 2. I've given Senegal, and I think the only one that really has a chance is Morocco. I think for Cameroon and Ghana, Cameroon has a small chance actually, but Ghana, I think. Although I will say this, I saw a video earlier this morning. The Ghanaian team getting off the. I told you this, right? Getting off the plane, and there were these drums playing, and it just did something. It just did something to my spirit.
We are carrying Africa on our back. Don't worry, man. We got you.
Because Ghana and Cameroon, we're talking about countries that are so very close to each other, and Senegal. Like, basically, this is the West Africa and North Africa contingent. The North Africans, Tunisia always gets through and always does terribly. They're not good enough. How they qualify is because they're organized. Morocco is not what Morocco used to be. And I think Cameroon and Senegal are the ones who are able, even without stars, are the only teams I would say who are able without stars to do something with their, just on spirits. Ghana, then again, the way you guys have been coached, and I don't know why Ado is not the coach, the main coach anyway.
No, Otto Addo is the main coach.
I think it's Houghton that's the main coach.
No, Otto Addo is the main coach. Houghton is the technical advisor. Otto Addo is the coach. Yeah.
Okay.
If the GFA are trying something, which is good.
Interesting.
They're trying to keep
I thought it was Chris Houghton. Okay.
No.
Well, let's see. I think it would just be good to see Black African coaches at the World Cup. To be honest with you, it would just be nice to see for a change.
Okay, so your final prediction?
So my final prediction.
Come on, man.
God, I badly want to say Ghana.
Listen, I'm saying it. I'll say it on your behalf. I'll say Portugal and Ghana. In fact, anybody in Ghana, I don't care. Just Ghana should be one of them.
I'll say Portugal, and
I'm starting my fast tonight on behalf of Ghana.
You'll be skinny by the time that game comes. I'll say Portugal and Uruguay, I think. Kai! I don't even like saying that.
I know, right?
I don't even like saying that.
Doesn't feel good. But anyway,
I don't even like saying that.
We've done an hour and 56 minutes. Should we spend the last 4 just going through the comments and then?
Yeah. Okay, so it's mainly people's predictions. Mark said, will Africa make the semi-final in this World Cup? I have a bold prediction about this World Cup that Senegal will go further than any team did last year, which is just very easy. But I have a feeling that Africa and I guess Qatar in this instance, I was going to say the Middle East, but Qatar, Iran, and African teams will surprise people and go quite far. That's what I think. I think the climate is suited for these types of countries. I think the time in the season is suited for these types of countries. Okay. I think the expectation on the European nations and the South American nations is high. And I think the ones that are supposed to do their job will do their job. Like I think Brazil and Argentina will do well. I think England, France, Belgium, they could all flop at some point. I could see that happening. You just look at it like this, right? Let's say Senegal finishes first or second. They might most likely play somebody like Iran, US, Wales, or England. I could see them progressing. Let's look at Cameroon. Let's say Cameroon finishes first or second. They will most likely play, I think, Portugal, Ghana, Uruguay, or South Korea. Again, over a 90-minute game and extra time, anything can happen. Ghana even. You understand? Ghana could play. No, actually, no. I can't see Ghana. I'm sorry. It's just so hard to see Ghana doing anything. But let's just say Senegal and Cameroon.
Okay. Listen. Cameroon. Don't let that win hurt you so much. Yeah, you need to let it go.
My brother, it's not.
My brother, let it go.
Listen. I'm a Pan-African. I don't care. I told you I'm buying a Ghanaian jersey. Anyway, all right. Let's read the comments. So Mark will say, will Africa make the semi-final in this World Cup? Good question. I would love to know you guys' opinion, but I think semi-final. I think Senegal has a chance, and I think Mane coming in the final group match and then the second round will just turn it for them. I think Koulibaly will hold strong. I think Mendy will make the saves he made in the Champions League final. I think Idrissa Gana Gueye, if he's going, will just find that energy that he had in PSG and do something. I think even Ismaila Sarr might say, no, I'm not supposed to be playing for Watford. I'm going to do something. Watch out for Senegal. And Aliou Cisse, any man that has locks and coaches a football team is somebody that's worth your respect. Let's keep going. So, Kwame Olatunji's predictions. He said Group A, Senegal and Netherlands. That's basically yours.
Yeah.
Group B, England and Wales. I could easily see that happening. Argentina and Mexico for Group C.
Yeah.
France and Denmark for Group D. Spain and Germany, Group E. Belgium and Croatia, Group F. Brazil and Cameroon, Group G. Portugal and Ghana. That would be the Kwame part of his name.
Well done, Kwame.
Kwame, I don't blame you.
I'm with you.
So, good question. Mark said, do we get to include Ecuador, Brazil, France, and maybe Canada as Africa if you look at the makeup of their teams? I'm not going to lie to you. Ecuador, anytime I see this Ecuador, what's the other team that Valencia was from? That United player, what country was he from? Anytime I look at these South American teams, I never even forget the African Nations. I said the African Nations Cup, the Euro final 2016 between Portugal and France, where 75% of the players were African, either born in Africa, to the point where the people that scored the goals were all born in Africa, in Cape Verde and Angola. So yes, Brazil, Ecuador, we claim them. I think Canada is hard to claim. Canada and US, Africa, it's just hard. But Ecuador, Brazil, I think Brazil, France. If you knock out all the African teams, France is always the team I always support. Sadio Mane has been ruled out. He had surgery. Jesus Christ, he's been ruled out. It looks like.
Oh, completely. Oh wow,
he's been ruled out. I don't know if that's ruled out for every stage. I don't know if if there's a
that doctor couldn't fix the problem. That juju doctor,
that devil doctor. Anyway, and then Sadio Mane is ruled out. He had surgery in Australia this week. But there we go.
That changes
a lot. But anyway, so it's going to be an exciting World Cup. I'm looking forward to it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Appreciate the comments. Appreciate the feedback. Kofi, any final words?
No. I think,
people don't usually say that. When you say any final words, no. People just say stuff.
Ask me now. This guy, in corporate, we just keep it simple. At least
corporate guys. All right, man.
But yeah, thank you, people that joined and gave comments. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you guys.
Stay tuned for next week's episode as well. We don't know what we're going to discuss here, do we?
No, I don't think so.
Do we know we're going to discuss? We haven't decided yet.
I don't think so. But we will be back again. So this is pretty fun. Thank you for tuning in. Blessings. Enjoy the World Cup, and we'll speak to you again next week.
All right.